Welcome to the Healing Courageously podcast, where we engage in open, honest, and healthy conversation about everything from addiction, abuse, and recovery to marriage, family, and spirituality. We hope you find this podcast helpful. Our goal is that you will find a new way of living as you look closer at yourself in these areas of your life, which will lead to a happier and healthier you. Now here's your host, Randy Boyd.
Greetings. Welcome to this episode of Healing Courageously. On this episode, I want to be talking about, it's probably in my opinion, is the number one thing that will pretty much guarantee you freedom that you never thought you could have before, from a lot of different things. Something that nobody likes to talk about, especially survivors of abuse. They don't want to hear that. They don't even want to hear this word. And the word that we're going to talk about today is forgiveness. Now, I understand where all these people are coming from, because I was one of those people at one time. Growing up, a lot of survivors, what we hear all the time is, Randy, you just need to forgive, forget, and move on. Happened a long time ago, man. Just get over it. Move on. Well, those are the worst 5-6 letter words that you can say to any survivor. They don't need to hear that. If they could just move on, they would. They'll never forget it as long as we live. It's going to be a part of their life for the rest of their life. We want to move on. I wanted to move on for a long time, but we didn't know how to. And when you got people telling you that it's time to forgive, forget, and move on, that doesn't help. You got people telling you, hey, that was 30 years ago. Why are you still carrying that around? Doesn't work. Why do we still carry it around? Because of people like that. Because people that don't want to believe us. Because people don't understand what it's like to have that kind of abuse and that kind of hatred towards people. Now, like I said, to me, forgiveness is the number one key to be truly free and have a really good life. Now, it took me a while, because I never wanted, don't talk to me about forgiveness. You don't know what those people did to me. Now, of course, I'm talking the most radical kind of forgiveness there is, when there's abuse happening, to you. That basically, when you're abused as a child, whether it's sexually, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, the spirit of the child has been assassinated. The character of the child has been assassinated. And at that moment in time, our lives change. We go into survival mode. I believe God gives us this innate ability to survive. And so we do things as young children that are abnormal compared to other children as a means of survival. A little child that was hurt, dives deep inside of us. And so we step out of that. It sounds kind of weird, and we're protecting that inner child within us, doing the best we can. I had a therapist tell me several years ago at this point. I was doing some, I can't remember what it's called. Not tapping, it's a pencil thing. It's a really good form of therapy and it works really well. Sorry, I'll find it for you and get it up there. If not today, I'll put it on another post. But if she looks me square in the eyes and says, Randy, you've done everything absolutely perfect in your life to this time, up until this time. And that was an eye-opener. And I use that with a lot of our clients a lot of times, because the reality is that I did everything I needed to survive, to protect myself. Was it all always right? No, not at all. No, matter of fact, some of it was absolutely hideous and stupid, but it's all I knew how to do. Who was I looking to for guidance? Was people out in the world. You know, I was a businessman. I was looking for the people in business. Those were my mentors. I wanted to, you know, they're successful. What are they doing to be successful? And that's what I modeled after. And a lot of those self-made business people were successful, but they had terrible relationships, terrible marriages. And, you know, thus I followed in that same pattern. So forgiveness is a key part, and I don't want anybody to turn away from this. I mean, just hear me out. You make your own choice. Now, here's what I want to say, and this is what people need to start understanding. Now what I'll tell people is when they enter into this world of recovery, and by the way, I'm not talking drugs and alcohol. I'm talking life recovery, okay? Because that's essentially, once we get rid of drugs and alcohol, we're recovering our life, the life that God intended us to have. And that's just the bottom line, period. It's a process. Forgiveness is a process. And yes, we must forgive if we want to move on. And we want to move on. We don't want to stay stuck where we're at. Nobody does. I guarantee you that. And you need to hear this, doctor. We will never forget. Don't even think that we can forget. I mean, go into your own mind and think about things that happened to you or things that, you know, you did, whatever. Did you forget them? Maybe some of them you forgot temporarily, but I bet a lot of you have pretty good memories of the past. Good, bad, or indifferent. And I would say this, as bold as I am, that if you're saying no, you're lying. Simple. Real simple. You might not remember everything. That much I know. So then what is forgiveness? Let's just get right down to the definition of it, and then we'll go from there. Okay? This is gonna get eye-opening. This might stir some things up. Maybe not in a good way for some people, but I hope in a good way for a lot of people as we go through this today. Forgiveness is the intentional and voluntary process by which a victim undergoes a change in feelings and attitude regarding an offense. Lets go of negative emotions such as revenge with an increased ability to wish the offender well. Right. How are we going to do that after everything he did to me? And I understand the question. And if you do the work, it happens. Believe me. About probably 4 years into my recovery, and I was still working with my therapist. She said one day when I finished my fourth step, I told her that, my fifth step, I told her I finished it. She said, okay, good, we're going to talk about your stepfather today. I go, no, we're not. I don't want to talk about him. What's there to talk about? He molested me. He beat me. He did all sorts of mean things to me. Well, we ended up talking about him and talking about what his life might have been like. And she was pretty point on when as time went on and I found out more and more and more about Jack, my stepfather. She was pretty much point on exactly what he was like and what happened in his life. And it was that day that I walked out of her office and literally the backpack of rocks, the backpack of vengeance, the backpack of hate, the thought that I had every day for 38 years of plotting his assassination, all that was gone. I walked out floating on a cloud because I'd fully forgiven him. I mean, fully forgiven him. It takes a while. You know, forgiveness is a process. Sometimes you guys say, oh, yeah, I forgive you. And then something comes up and you don't. Okay, fine. You got to work through all these issues. Sorry for the dogs. Unfortunately, I don't have a studio to work out of yet, so the dogs are part of the ambiance. I'll just say it that way. So it's just getting, I mean, I was free, absolutely free. right? I never once had another thought about wanting to assassinate him. Now, and I'll go into in a little while what forgiveness is not, because this is where it gets really dicey for a lot of people. The belief they have if they forgive somebody, and it actually, I got caught off guard in a church service one time by a guy named Papa Brock that actually relieved me of a thought, and then we'll go into that a little bit later, and actually set me free from my mother, out of all people. So that's what forgiveness is, right? And forgive me for this computer that I'm looking at over here. So we talked about what is forgiveness. And Don Miguel Ruiz, he authored the Four Agreements, which is a phenomenal book for anybody to read. It's a great book. He says this. I want you to really imagine this happening. If I don't forgive you, I carry the corpse of your actions over my shoulder. If I don't forgive you, I carry the corpse of your actions over my shoulder. So I'll use my wife because I had the affair in 2004, and she's a phenomenal. I don't know. She's an angel. She forgave me right away. And so my wife, was 140 pounds, about 140 pounds, and I'm 215, 220. Can you imagine her carrying me over her shoulders for the rest of her life because she doesn't want to forgive me? That's what I was doing with my stepfather and my mother both. I was carrying them both over my shoulder because I couldn't forgive them. So imagine that. Imagine if you could take that weight that you're carrying around, that you probably don't even know you're carrying around because you just got used to it. Imagine if you could take all that weight away. What would your life be like? Imagine if you took 5% away, just to start. And then took another 5%. Worked a little more deeper. Took another 15% off. How much freer would you be? How much lighter could you walk around on this earth? Take it from somebody that carried a lot of weight for 38 years. My stepfather didn't even know where I was. He didn't care about me. Nothing. The reality is he was a serial pedophile that I come to find out. He didn't care about me. So forgiveness is crucial. Because what can you do to change it? You're allowing somebody to hold on to the space in your head. You're giving them free rent. Is there anything you can do to change what happened to you in the past? I don't care if you were molested, if you were raped, if you were beaten, any kind of abuse, or you just had somebody that constantly was breaking your trust. Is there anything you can do to change that? It's done and over with. I was talking, I think it was, it was on my podcast we released this Monday, which is with Nathan Blackburn of True North Retreats. I suggest you tune into that one and take a listen to that. But, when he sat down with the sponsor and finally, for the umpteenth time, was going to get real about stuff, and he told his sponsor, and he was afraid to tell his sponsor about what happened to him, because he knew his sponsor would tell him what his part was in it. And that's scary, because that's what I thought too. But the reality is that I had no part in my abuse, none whatsoever. I was a kid. And what Nathaniel said was, you know what he told me, Randy? You know what my sponsor told me? Your part was carrying it around for 30 years and not telling nobody. He doesn't have a part of being molested or abused. He doesn't have a part in that. That's nothing he did. He's a kid. But from the rest of his adult life until he got help, His part was he carried it around for 30 years without telling nobody. That's a lot of weight to carry. A lot of weight. So the word forgive, I'm going to go into a little biblical stuff right now because that's one of my, believe it or not, after 38 years of nothing to do with God in the Bible, it's one of my my best resources. The Bible, the word forgive, I'm going to go through the word forgive in one way or another, in one form or another, is mentioned 109 times in the Bible. Okay? Forgive is mentioned 56 times. Forgiven is mentioned 42 times. Forgiveness 7 times and forgiving 4 times. Okay? Now, I don't know how many people that are listening to this might be in recovery. I don't know how many people use the Lord's Prayer in their their meditations of prayer and stuff, whatever. But the question I have, if we're using the Lord's Prayer, our Father art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And what's the next 2 phases? Forgive us our trespasses. So we're asking God to forgive us our trespasses. How? As we forgive others. So if you want God to forgive you, it says it right there. Then you need to forgive those that have harmed you. Now, I'm going to say throughout, it's a process. I don't expect people to go out and just right away forgive. And the other thing with forgiveness is this. You don't have to go, if you're talking about abuse, you don't have to go to your perpetrator and say, like for example, my stepfather, I didn't have to go to Jack and say, Jack, you know what? It's done a lot of work. I forgive you for all the abuse that you did to me. Don't even think about doing that. Because that will give your perpetrator a chance to look at you and say, what are you talking about? I never did none of that. And we have a hard enough time, survivors have a hard enough time just confronting it to begin with. And then to do all this work and go to your perpetrator and says, you know what, I forgive you. So the forgiveness is between you, your mentor, and God when it comes to the perpetrator. We have to remember that forgiveness is always for you. It frees you. Just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean that they're going to be your friend again. Doesn't mean that they're going to allow you back in their life. You need to really understand that. And my sponsor asked me, he told me, Randy, never ask another person for forgiveness. What do you mean don't ask them for forgiveness? And it's contrary to what a lot of people believe. Because then I'm asking them to take action. What if they don't want to forgive me? What if they reject me? Again, the rejection, the abandonment. You see where I'm going? We have to be very careful with all this. So those people that are out there that are saying, forgive, forget, move on. It happened a long time ago. Why are you still holding on to that? Because of people like that. Because we've never been allowed to talk about our abuse. The key is we have to find somebody. I don't care what kind of abuse it is. Emotional abuse could be somebody that breaks your trust and lies to you all the time. That's emotional abuse. We don't have somebody to go and talk to and that will be empathetic to us. How are we supposed to heal? Oh, it's no big deal. What do you mean it's no big deal? How do you know it's no big deal? Maybe it's no big deal to you. But how do you know it's no big deal to the person that is talking? In Matthew 6:14, I say, it says, "For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will forgive you." Okay, so again, if you want to be forgiven by God, you need to forgive other people. Okay? So one of the questions that comes up is, why do we forgive? And it's a great question. Why do we forgive? Well, I already told you, the main one that I believe is that it just frees us. It takes away the weight of the world off of our shoulders. It takes away all those negative thoughts. Then we can start, once we forgive and we're free of that burden, then we can start healing our inner self. Right? And all this takes work. How much work? It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a year. For a lot of us, we're taking, 20, 30, 40 years of this pain and garbage, right? We're taking that and we are we're working on renewing, transforming our minds, transforming us. Like Romans 12:2 says, do not be conformed by the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Okay? So this according to Fitzgibbons, author of Abused Boys, here are 4 benefits of forgiveness. Freedom from the subtle control of individual and past and events of the past. Freedom from the subtle control of individuals and events of the past. It free. Now, there's still times where there's a lot of people that have done me wrong, and they're still doing me wrong. People in the church and so on and so forth, right? And so I can forgive them, right? But I still sometimes get uncomfortable because the pain's still there. That doesn't mean they're not forgiven. That's on me, right? It's a subtle control of individuals and events of the past. That's what I didn't realize, is that my stepfather had so much control over my life and he wasn't even part of it. Same with my mother. A decreased likelihood that the anger will be misdirected towards others who were not responsible for the hurt. My God. My poor wife, she was the receiver, not for our entire marriage, probably for 3 or 4 years, which is long enough. She was a receiver of my anger. It wasn't at her, it was my pent-up anger from not being able to talk. You go, why are you so angry? Well, if you've been told to shut up and you don't matter all your life, and you just keep stuffing it and stuffing it and stuffing it, and then all of a sudden something's said or somebody does something, or you might have had 1 or 2 too many cocktails, which happened to me, several times in the last couple of years, then all hell comes out of you. And it's misdirected to the wrong people, to the people you love. And thank God my wife knew that I was abused. She was the first person I ever told before we got married. And I believe that's what saved our marriage. But a lot of wives don't know anything. A lot of husbands. This goes both ways. And it's not anger, it's rage. It's years of pent-up anger that boils out as rage. There's nothing wrong with anger. We just don't know how to use it correctly. A lessening of fear of violent impulses. All right. I mean, I had a family. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. But I admit that for 38 years on a daily basis, I was plotting the assassination of my stepfather in his head. I fantasized about how I could do it. Was I ever going to do it? Probably not. Because I got a family, I had a business, I didn't want to lose it. But that's where my mind was. That's just as bad as committing murder, period. If you do it on a spiritual realm. The facilitation of the reconciliation of relationships, if so desired. Okay? If so desired. That's a key word right there. Just because you forgive someone does not mean you have to reconcile with them. Period. Okay? Another thing that forgiveness is, right? It can mean giving up my right to hurt you for hurting me. And when I say give up my right for me my right to hurt you for hurting me, that means getting back emotionally, spiritually, and physically, right? By means of shaming somebody. Shaming is wicked. We don't need to be shaming nobody. The reality is that the shame that I carried around for years wasn't my shame. It was my stepfather and my mother's shame. They were both abused. They had so much shame on them, it was unbelievable. By shunning them, we don't need to do that. Now, if I was ever to see my stepfather, which I never did, right, and for the entire time before he passed away a couple of years ago. But if I did, I would have said, "Hey, how you doing?" Right? I'd have been friendly to him. Jesus says, "Be Christ-minded in all that you do." Philippians 2:5. My mom, the same thing. And I saw my mom a lot. I forgave her, made my amends to her. But she was so toxic that she wasn't allowed in our life anymore. But if I ever saw her, I would most definitely say hi. Silent treatment is the worst. Don't ever give anybody the silent treatment. That is so shaming and so brutal. Whether you think so or not, it is. Here's what's really, the last two things I'm going to talk about on what is forgiveness is this. Okay? It's impossible, absolutely impossible, to live in this world without getting hurt, offended, lied to, misunderstood, or rejected. Say it again. It is impossible in this world without getting to live without getting. It's impossible to live in this world without getting hurt, offended, lied to, misunderstood, or rejected. I want you to hear that loud and clear. And when my therapist told me those things 14 years ago, however long it was, 16, 17 years ago, I honestly wanted to slap her. I go, what do you mean? But it's the truth. The best of the best people that you think you know are going to do. They're going to reject you. They're going to betray you. They're going to lie to you. Don't think just because they're a certain person, a pastor, a police officer, friends, whatever, they'll do it. And what we want to do is we need to learn how to not take things personally. But Randy, it's about me. They said, "Hey, you did this and that." But look it. You don't have the power. You're not God. You don't have the power to make anybody feel or do or say anything they don't want to do. That is, they're deflecting their own issues back onto you. You need to understand that. And I know it's hard and it takes time. And we do take it personally a lot because it feels like a personal attack. And I can guarantee you that it's not a personal attack on you, it's a personal attack on themselves. And believe me, I have this conversation with a lot of people, and they struggle with not taking things personally, but when they finally get it, little baby steps at a time, they become much freer. Okay? So, what forgiveness is not? Now, this is key, because this is what really I struggle with. Because nobody ever told me what forgiveness is not. You forgive somebody, then they're back in our life, and everything's honky-dory, and you forget about everything, and you know what? Yeah, they come back to my life, so what? They hurt me again? I guess I got to keep on forgiving. Well, the Bible says to forgive 70 times 7, but there comes a point where you just don't allow people back in your life, period. So these are the things that forgiveness is not. And by the way, a lot of this is in my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. There's a whole chapter 12, on forgiveness. The whole chapter is based on forgiveness. Okay? So forgiveness is not approving or diminishing the abuse. Not approving it. It happened. It's real. Again, the forgiveness is for you so you can be free of whatever is in your head holding you to the person that offended you in any way. Again, I talk a lot about abuse because that's my background. A lot of people I work with, they've been abused. Almost in all of our couples, pretty much everybody that we counsel, both parties eventually comes out that they were abused in some way in their family. Forgiveness is not enabling the abuse. So you're not, because you forgive the person, you're not enabling them. You don't have that much power. If that person wants to choose to abuse other people, that's fine. You do what you can to warn other people, but you're not enabling them by forgiving him. Forgiveness is not denying a wrongdoing. Person hurt you and hurt you bad. Some people hurt you really bad. It's a soul wound. And some of those soul wounds take a long, long time to get over. That's why recovery is a lifetime. Forgiveness is not denying that you were abused and hurt. Not at all. You were hurt. It's painful. It's painful. It can be painful today. The difference for me, what will happen today is sometimes it comes up and something just triggers it. And I'll just look at my wife and I go, man, I'm really angry today. Why are you angry? I go, well, because my childhood was taken from me. I missed out on so much. But I'm not angry at my stepfather anymore. The pain's real because what did I lose out on? So in a matter of 5 minutes, that comes up. I talk about it with my wife, who's really good about this stuff, and it's gone because she acknowledges it. She doesn't try to fix me because the pain is real, and it's going to come up, and it's going to come up. It can come up a lot at first, but it will diminish over time, but it's still going to be there. And you just learn how to walk through it and talk through it. You can't go over it no more. You can't go around it. You got to walk right through the middle of it. Forgiveness is not waiting for an apology. And so you forgive them before they apologize. If you're going to wait for an apology from somebody that's hurt you, don't do it. You might be waiting for the rest of your life, and you don't want to live that way. I promise you. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. And remember, you don't even have to say anything to them. I wouldn't say anything to them. Between your mentor, a sponsor, a pastor, and God. I never said nothing to my stepfather. And I had never been so free before in my life. Forgiveness is not forgetting. You're not going to forget. You can't forget. It's pretty much next to impossible to forget. Our brains are amazing things. There's so much that goes on in our brain, and we've got filing cabinets in our path. The amygdala, it just holds on to everything that happened to us. And when we get triggered, it goes right to the amygdala and pulls up these things. And so it's going to be really hard. Some of the little stuff you might be able to forget, it might pop up. Oh, yeah, I remember that guy did that. He tried to steal my surfboard, and I caught him. Done and over with. The guy was messed up. What can I say? Forgiveness does not mean that we will ever have. Oh, I'm sorry, one more. Forgiveness is not ceasing to feel the pain. I talked about just a minute ago a little bit. It still hurts. It's okay for it to bother you. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. Sometimes forgiveness is something that is regularly required. I mentioned that earlier too, that sometimes we'll have to forgive 5% to start, and then something comes up and the forgiveness goes away. And I've had conversations with people, and that they thought they had fully forgiven somebody, and through them coming to me not going after them, but them coming to me and talking about certain things, they realized that they never really fully forgave their offender. They were still carrying around resentments and anger. So it's crucial. Forgiveness is not neglecting justice by any means. You can forgive, and you can also pursue justice at the same time. First therapist I went to, he says, now I gotta, because I told him what happened. He goes, now I gotta report this to the authorities. I go, do what you gotta do. He's got to pay the price, not me. I've been paying the price for a long time. Forgiveness is not trusting. We need to be exceedingly careful with who we trust. That is so crucial. A lot of survivors, a lot of people that have been hurt don't trust. And it's going to take a while for them to learn how to trust. And it's going to be done in pieces. And if you betray that person, if a person has if a survivor or somebody that's been hurt has a problem trusting somebody, and they finally feel comfortable enough to say, okay, I'm going to give this guy a shot, I'm going to trust him, and that person breaks her trust or his trust, good luck. Just because you forgive doesn't mean that trust is going to come right back in your life. If my wife was sitting here, we'll probably do something with my wife about this. She'd tell you that I forgave Randy right away, but it was Randy's feet that I watched. I saw Randy, what he was doing. I saw Randy taking care of himself. I saw Randy working really hard to become a different person. She used to say, all I want is the husband I married back. That's all I want. I want my old Randy back. She'll tell you today, I got so much more than that back. It can happen. It just takes a lot of work and understanding on both parties. That forgiveness does not mean that person will ever be allowed back in your life. You really need to understand that. And it does not mean that you will ever have a relationship with that person again. So that was the one that was bothering me the most about my mother, not my stepfather, but about my mother, because she was still alive. And I was, I forgave her. I made my amends to her. But I just can't let her back in my life. She's so toxic, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to this, right? And I did have a therapist, and I had spiritual people that helped me through this. And I finally said, she's got to be cut out of my life. She just can't be a part no more, and it's her loss. And there's more to it, so don't judge. Take the plank out of your own eye if you want to sit there and judge me for dishing my mom. But it was all done out of love. But excuse me, that COVID. Man, that COVID stuff gets me still once in a while. My brain just absolutely. Oh, so it was in church. Came back. It was in church, and Papa Brock was preaching, and he was preaching on forgiveness. And I'm going, oh, and so through the first half of the sermon, I'm just sinking in my chair, going, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Am I ever going to be okay? But then he came out. He said this. Understand me. Hear me and understand me loud and clear. Forgiveness does not mean, just what I just said right now, that person will ever be allowed in your life again, or that you can have a relationship with that person, or that you have to reconcile. That person hurts you badly and deeply. You have to protect yourself. So that's when I was set completely free. All right? So what does it mean to forgive? It means we accept the pain. All right? We accept the pain. Acceptance does not mean approval. Remember, acceptance doesn't mean approval. We have to accept it. If we're not, what are we doing? We're fighting. And what are we fighting for? We're fighting for control over something that we can't change. The pain's real. Just feel it. Find somebody to talk to about it, walk through it, and then move on. the only way you're going to get through it is if you have somebody that you can talk to that will sit there and listen to you, be empathetic, and not try to fix you. It means we accept within ourselves the consequences of the actions of others. We have to accept the fact, hey, I was abused by so and so. I was abused by my boyfriend, my husband, who I thought I could trust. What a dummy I was. No. Just accept the fact that it happened. You're not a dummy. You trusted that person. He made a vow between you and God. Forgiveness means letting go of your right to punish another. All right, you gotta let it go. It means we cancel all debt that is owed. So, forgiveness is actually a accounting term. What it means is we just forgive all the debt, we wipe the slate clean. We hold nothing more against them. Okay? Yeah, I still talk about them because it's what I have to do with what I do. I mean, my story is my story, and I use it to help other people. But I don't live it. I don't live it like I used to. Not at all. So, a lot of people say, I can't forgive myself. Okay. So I'll ask them, let me ask you a question. Have you asked God for forgiveness? And they'll say, yeah. Okay. Do you feel that God fully forgave you for what you asked forgiveness for? Well, yeah, absolutely. Okay. You have no right to forgive yourself. What, Randy? You have no right to forgive yourself. If you say, I can't forgive myself, you were just forgiven by God. So if you're saying, I can't forgive myself, you're saying, I'm better than God. No, you're not. So then it comes down to this, all right? Then it comes down to, what are you holding on to so tightly that you can't let go? If God's forgiven you, and hopefully if you're working with a good, strong mentor, life coach or whatever, what are you holding on to so tightly that you don't want to let go of? There's nothing that anybody has done that is so bad that people are going to look at you and go, what? You did what? I've heard some pretty awful stuff listening to people. I'm not the judge. We're human beings. We make mistakes. If God forgives you, you're forgiven. There's nothing else to be said about it. Try to figure out what you're holding on to so you can let it go. Sit down with somebody and walk through it with them. It's really simple. If you just, it takes a lot of courage. Let me put it to you. A lot of courage and a lot of strength. So, I have my own issues that I've been dealing with. And my story, part of it is being abused by the church, spiritually abused by the church, lied to. I've seen a lot of hypocrisy in the church. My mother and stepfather, the deacon of the church, member of the choir. People thought they walked on cloud nine. They had golden. They just thought they were but man, behind closed doors, what was happening was just brutal. I never knew what was going to happen at night. So, we got all the hypocrisy, and there's a lot. All right, so it took me 38 years to walk back into church. And I was ready to walk away the first day I was there if I saw certain things or was told certain things, which I wasn't. So I put my head down. And I've become an integral part of that. I'm a non-paid. I'm non-paid. I'm not staff, but I'm the associate pastor. I do with all the healing ministries. My wife and I do all the counseling. And so some things happened that I was once again betrayed and lied to by a pastor. Not once. It's happened several times. It's been something that's been ongoing. And this last time it got pretty tough. So when it comes to forgiveness, and this pastor doesn't like conflict, so he won't come to me. So, when it comes to forgiveness, it's like, okay, I need to forgive him. So, but what I do is I talked to a couple other pastors about, there's some things that went down that were not something that I was ready to, definitely not approvable, not at all. And so I let a couple other pastors know what was going on. And we could talk to P.O. It's not worth talking to them, because it's the same thing every time. So what do I do? So I'm always looking, because I want to make sure that I'm walking on the fence on the right side, right? Sometimes I can walk the razor's edge, and I'll be the first person to admit that, and I'll be the first person to say I was wrong. But then I was reading the other morning, and I want you to hear this. I want you to understand this. I was reading Luke 17, and in verse 3, it actually goes all the way to verse 1, and it talks about if you harm one of my little ones and cause them to fall, you'd be better off with a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the sea and die. And then it goes, if take heed to yourselves. If your brother sins against you, rebuke him. And if he repents, forgive him. All right, so this is where we have to be real careful. This is a ground that we have to be careful on. Because here's the meaning of rebuke. I want to know, my English professor says, if you don't know the true meaning of a word, make sure you look it up. It's pretty harsh. Reprimand strongly, warn or restrain. Criticize sharply. To express sharp criticism regarding an act. Okay? So, first of all, I needed to make sure that my side of the street was clean. So it was. It's exactly what I did. And if he repents, forgive him. I don't know if he's going to repent. But what did I say earlier? That this is where you got to be really careful, and you got to really, really understand different things. Because earlier I said, don't wait for an apology to forgive somebody. So right there where it says, if he repents, forgive him. Oh, I don't have to forgive him because he never repented. No, you have to forgive him. You have to forgive him. Because if you don't, you're going to carry all that crap around. Doesn't matter who it is. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, your brother. Some people just don't know how to say I'm sorry. Some people don't know how to repent. It's just my wife. She's one that has a real hard time saying the words I'm sorry, because then she's bad. So you just, at times, don't expect anything out of the other person. Say what you need to say and say it with love. Speak truth. Don't slander nobody. Because it ain't slander, it's truth. And then forgive them. So let me close this out by, how do we forgive? All right. So, like I said, it's a process. It's a process, and it could take time. There's small ways to forgive, and there's big things we gotta forgive. The number one is if we commit to letting go. Let go, and let God. Okay? So we commit, okay? We're committing I'm going to commit. I'm going to let this go. When? I'm working on letting it go. Don't use the word try, because try is absolutely powerless. Either God is everything or God is nothing. You're either working on it or you're not. If you say I'm trying, you're not doing a thing. That word needs to be taken out of our vocabulary. It's extremely powerless. So I'm committed to letting go. I committed myself, so I'm going to start working on letting go. How long is it going to take? I don't know. Hopefully you'll be working with a good mentor, coach, or sponsor that they can help you through that process. Number 2, think about the pros and cons. And this is where you're going to have to sit down with a pencil and paper, and I would suggest that you don't chicken scratch and don't go right off the top of your head. Sit there and really think and give yourself a fair chance. What are the pros and cons? If I forgive him or I don't forgive him, pros and cons. Realize you have a choice. Forgiveness is a choice. If you don't want to forgive, you can't blame it on nobody. You made the choice not to forgive. So it's a choice. You're either going to forgive him or you're not. Whatever you want to do. You want peace in your life? My suggestion is you work really hard on forgiveness. Empathize. That's a hard one. Well, how do you want to be, again, I'm going to some pretty bad abuse. How am I supposed to be empathetic with somebody that did that to me? What was his life like? I don't care what his life was like. That's exactly what I told my therapist. But the answers came when she explained it all to me. It's like, oh. She goes, I'm not condoning or co-signing what he did to you. It was wrong, period. Absolutely wrong. He should have never done that to you. Understand your responsibility. And that's not, it would be like the one person I was talking to today that I held on to it for 30 years. That was my responsibility. That was my part in it. So responsibility is, I'm either going to choose to forgive or I'm going to choose not to. You can't wait for the other person. It's not going to happen. My mom never apologized to me. Never. She kept on blaming me on everything. Focus on the present. We get so caught up in the past and what somebody did to us in the past, right? And sometimes that can be so overwhelming that we forget about the present. All the goodness that we're surrounded with right now. All the goodness in our life. If all we're doing is thinking about what somebody did to us 5, 10, 15, a year ago, whatever it is, you're missing out on a lot of life. Allow peace to enter your life. And feel compassion. And feel compassion. But allow that peace to enter your life. Real peace, real serenity. Remember when I first went to treatment, that's what I wanted. I just want peace and serenity in my life. I thought I had it before. That's all I want. And within a year, I took out a letter that I wrote that what I wanted within the next year. And I had peace and serenity like I never thought I could have. Just because I let everything go. It wasn't serving me. Why do I want to hold on to something that's not serving me? But it's destroying my life. So there's something from Buddha. If I'm sitting in a field and a tree fell on me, do I blame the tree? Okay? I can't control the tree falling, but I can control what I do when I see the tree falling. I can control what I see. I can control the tree. I can control what I do when I see the tree falling. You going to sit there and let the tree smack you and kill you? Or are you going to get up and walk away from it? Let it go. Let it go. So I know that's a lot today. Forgiveness is a really tough subject for a lot of people. They don't talk to several recovery centers, and they all say, I don't know how you do it, Randy. I don't know, you want us to go after them. I go, no. I understand where you guys are at. I was there at once too, but you know what? It's done and over with. I don't have any more ill will against him. I hope he has. You say it like this. Gets what he deserves. I wouldn't want to be him when he was standing in front of God when he passed away a couple of years. Not at all. So he was a pretty evil man, and my mother was pretty evil too. But they both had their own issues. They were both severely abused as kids growing up themselves. So, like I say, a lot of this is in my book. I have a whole chapter in chapter 12 on forgiveness, healing the wounded child within, which you can get on Amazon. It's in paperback. Yep. It's a paperback. #1 international bestseller. Number 1 in 5 mental health categories. You can get my devotion, my 30-day devotion of the wholeness. It's on paperback and Kindle and Amazon, and then my 7-day challenge. It's a little workbook that goes with my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. You get that also on Amazon, and that's just in paperback. Also visit the website courageoushealers.org and changeyourlifestorynow.com. Changeyourlifestorynow.com. That's my life coaching page. My wife and I are Simba certified. I'm Simba certified. We do Simba's assessments. It's an absolute ball to do with a couple. And we do a lot of marriage counseling, a lot of individual counseling, deal with the addictions, with abuse, the whole gamut. So you can check out the website, changeyourlifestorynow.com, and see what our life coaching services are. And then check out it, like I said, the courageoushealersfoundation.org, courageoushealers.org, and you'll see what the foundation where we help sexually abused men and their families heal from the scars of sexual abuse. Okay, so thanks for joining me, and it's been a pleasure being with you today. As I always say at the end, take what you want and leave the rest, but just take something away from this, okay? Love you all. Thanks for joining me. It's greatly appreciated. Have a blessed life.
This has been Healing Courageously with Randy Boyd. We will have a new episode every Monday. Please like us on iTunes or Google Play. If you would like to know more about the services available from Randy, please visit him at changeyourlifestorynow.com. Thank you for spending time with us. We'll see you next week. And remember, if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does.